Hi everyone, it's me Giovanni, and I'm continuing the Richard Hayes and Ryu Hayabusa story. So, where I left off. Hayate, what happened to you? I was out on a date with Hatomi when, all of a sudden, her head exploded right in front of me. It was horrible. Oh my god. Hayate, I'm so sorry to hear that. But at the same time, it sounds strangely scary. Ryu hears the phone ring, and he answers it to Helena, freaking out on the other end. Helena explains to Ryu that she and Kokoro were having a sister bond, but then Kokoro's head exploded, causing blood to splatter. Ryu quickly hangs up and questions why this has happened, but then remembers what Richard was doing popping those balloons. They were filled with blood. Richard? Richard calmly looks at Ryu. What? I was just making sandwiches. Sorry about that. We will talk later. Okay. Well, did you want a sandwich? Ryu looks at Richard and then at the sandwiches. The sandwiches had turkey, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, pickles, and mayonnaise. Ryu takes one of them, and as he politely smiles at Richard. Thanks, Richard. They sure do look delicious. You're welcome. Oh, and I made some chocolate chip cookies for dessert. That's nice. After lunch, and Hayate left, Ryu got a phone call from Richard's father, Joseph, telling him that he was going to visit Richard for today. Another mistake that I made. Anyway, later, Joseph arrived and was greeted by Ryu. So you must be the dragon ninja Ryu Hayabusa, is that correct? Yes, sir. I can already tell you became my son's friend. Yes, why? It's nothing. Oh, okay, but, Joseph? What is it? It's about Richard. I always noticed he would be angry, upset, or completely calm, unaware about something happening. Oh, well, I do know that Richard had triggered emotions when something happened. You do? Yes, when Richard was 7 years old, I hired a babysitter to take care of him, even when he had his childhood friend over. His childhood friend? Yes, the babysitter was a woman with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a very beautiful face with alabaster skin. Her name was Ava, and Richard's childhood friend was a girl the same age as him with long red hair. Her name was Iris. Tell me more. Well, one day, while Richard and Iris were playing, they went near a cliff to look at the view, when all of a sudden, Ava went over to them, worried that they might fall off, but then Iris slipped off the cliff and hit her head on the rocks. She died right after that. Oh my god. Richard loved Iris. He had a crush on her and wanted to marry her when they got older. Richard hated Ava. He just didn't like her, and when Iris died, Richard blamed her for what happened. The next day, I came back home to see Ava on the floor next to the stairs. She apparently broke her neck by tripping on some toys. I found Richard, and he just stared at me with a sorrow but blank expression on his face. I see. Dad? Is that you? Oh, Richard! Ryu and I were talking about you. Oh, I see. Well, I better go now. You're leaving already? I'm sorry, my dear child, but I must leave now. Goodbye. Bye, Dad. Later at night, when Richard is in bed, Ryu decides to confront him about everything. Richard, I want to talk to you. What is it? What happened to your babysitter? When I was little, my dad hired Ava to babysit me. I didn't like her, especially since I heard rumors about her. I hated everything about her. The way she looked, the way she acted, everything. But she was pretty, but she way too pretty for my taste. And girls, especially their bodies. I don't like women with big boobs or thick butts. And I really don't like when ladies wear makeup. And Ava was exactly like that. In her attitude, she was really mean. I just really hated her. I see. One day, my childhood friend Iris and I were playing near the cliffs and went to look at the view when Ava pushed Iris off the cliff, and Iris died shortly after that happened. Richard begins to cry. I loved Iris. She was the perfect girl for me. I also wanted to marry her when we would get older someday, but she just died so young. I'm sorry to hear that. It's alright. Anyway, I was angry at Ava until I just couldn't take it anymore. And I pushed her down the stairs. And she broke her neck. I was just glad she died. But Iris didn't deserve what happened to her. I really hate blondes. These words that I'm gonna say right out of my mouth. Whores, sluts, bitches, bimbos. And just not my type. I like redheads more. Richard, I really don't know what were you thinking. Excuse me? What do you know? I hated her. And I never wanted to see her again. Ever. Just like Riley and then Rachel? Yes. What about Kokoro and Hitomi? You know exactly why. You did something absolutely disgusting, and I decided to make sure you never messed with them again. Tell me, how? With the balloons filled with blood and their heads exploding. Before Kasumi walked in, I took a syringe and filled it up with their blood. Then I used some magic to affect the blood. So when I popped the balloons, their head exploded. Oh my God, Richard. Why should you care about them? You disgust me. I'm sorry if you're upset. I didn't. It's fine. The next morning, Ryu notices Richard in the ballroom, ballet dancing again. Richard? Oh, Ryu. How did you sleep? It was alright. What about you? It was stressful, so I woke up. When I woke up, I made breakfast and decided to dance a little bit. I see. And I wanted to say that I'm sorry about making you upset last night. It's fine, Ryu. Besides, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Good, I'm glad. And I wanted to tell you something. What is it? Before we talked last night, I was talking to one of my friends who looks like me. His name is Shadow, and I told him if he was willing to hang out and spend the night here. What? He's a nice guy, so don't worry about it. Okay. In the afternoon, Shadow arrives. Ryu Kenshin, that is. Oh, hello, Shadow. Hi, Ryu. It's nice to see you. Shadow looks at Richard. Who's your friend? Oh, this is Richard Hayes. He actually lives in this house. Oh, I see. Well, it's kind of fancy. Yes, it is. Richard? Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm just gonna do some ballet dancing for a while. Ballet dancing? It helps me calm down after all the stress and anxiety inside my head. I see. Later at night, when everyone has gone to bed, Richard finds a camera on the coffee table. It belongs to Shadow. When Richard looks through the pictures, I'm just gonna skip this just to be safe. Please don't ask. Back to the story. Ryu wakes up hearing a sound of something like a hammer smashing an object in the kitchen. He stumbles in the kitchen to see Richard destroying a camera with a hammer. Richard, what do you think I'm doing? Ryu looks at Richard, and he didn't look good. Richard's hair was messy, and his eyes looked like he'd gone crazy. Ryu then looked at the camera that was smashed into pieces. Where did he find that camera? It doesn't matter, because what matters is that person who you invited to my house. That's his camera. Yes. Skipping this part. Do you fucking understand me? Yes. Good. Now shut up and go back to bed. While I go and throw the camera down in the incinerator. Ryu runs back to bed immediately while Richard takes the camera and throws it down the incinerator. The next morning, Ryu wakes up and notices that the house is utterly quiet. He looks around to see the doors to the ballroom open. He goes inside and then notices Richard sitting outside in the garden. Ryu looks closely as Richard reads in a book, almost a journal of sorts. When Richard pauses what he's doing, he goes to the kitchen for some breakfast. Ryu goes over to the sitting table and notices Richard's journal with pictures of his girlfriend Kayla with something written on the page saying, I love you, Kayla. You're beautiful, you're perfect, and the only girl I'll ever love in my entire life. Sincerely, Richard. Ryu couldn't help but look at it as he remembers all the times he was with Kasumi, and he starts to cry. Ryu then turns to look in the ballroom and imagines Richard and Kayla dancing, which then shifts to him, Ryu, and Kasumi dancing. Ryu covers his mouth, probably not wanting to throw up or something. Ryu then feels bad for Richard, who was probably still upset about last night. What have I done to him? Ryu leaves the room as Richard goes back to sit in the garden. Later that afternoon, Shadow talks with Ryu. Hey Ryu, have you seen my camera? Why do you ask? I can't find it anywhere. Oh, well, someone broke in, took a hammer, destroyed your camera, and threw it down the incinerator. Excuse me? That's what happened. Well, whatever, I'm gonna check the garden shed and to probably make a new one. That's alright, besides I'm worried about Richard. How come? Well, that's it for now. Hope to see you in the next part. Bye.